Hello and welcome. This is 2.6 Practicing Angles. First example says, find the measure of each angle. So what we're going to do right now before jumping into the problem is do a little review from chapter 1. So let's go to our notes from chapter 1 and talk about angle addition postulate. So the first thing we want to remember about our angle addition postulate is that if we have a point in between in the interior of our angle, angle AOC, which angle AOC is the large angle, then we can go ahead and say, well, this angle, angle AOB, which is the red angle, plus angle BOC is equal to the large angle, which is angle AOC. Now, remember when I talked about this lesson that I told you we cannot forget the most important part. The most important part is the geometry part. We have to write statements every time we're given problems like this. So we got to start first with the angle addition postulate. Now, there's another thing that I notice here in this problem, and that little box that is present there, that comes back into complementary angles. So these are things that we should remember. Again, if we see this box here, we're talking about not just complementary angles, but we're talking about a right angle. So go ahead and remember that all those things. Now, I'm going to start off the problem with you just so that you get the idea of what we're doing. And then you're going to go ahead and go off on your own. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to write down addition postulate. So we're going to highlight our angles, and each of the angles that we're going to highlight, we're going to make sure that we're highlighting in different colors. And so that's what I'm going to do. Highlight first this angle, then I'm going to highlight the angle adjacent to it, and finally I'm going to highlight the large angle, right? And that'll get us prepared to talk about, like I mentioned before, the angle addition postulate. So let's jump in and start there. Now, I went ahead and highlighted the first angle in purple. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that angle. And I'm going to write down first angle BAC. And notice you'll remember that if we name an angle, we have to have the vertex in the middle. So I said angle BAC, which names the angle that I just mentioned, plus angle CAD, which once again, you're naming the angle with the vertex in the middle. And again, you'll see that they have the same vertex, which is A, is equal to the large angle, which is angle BAD. And so you'll see, once again, this is my large angle, the angle BAD. The last thing I want you to remember is that this here is telling you to find the measure of each angle. So once again, to find the measure of each angle. So that means that yes, you might possibly find X, but that means you might have to go further. So keep that in mind, press pause, and go ahead and solve for the problem. All right, I believe that gave you enough time to go ahead and do the problem, so let's go ahead and begin. So you should get 10x plus 22 plus 7x plus 34 is equal to, now once again, we talked about this situation here. We talked about that this box represents a right angle, and we know that a right angle is equal to 90 degrees. So angle BAD is equal to 90 degrees. So at this point, we're just going to go ahead and solve from there. And I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. So let me go ahead and focus in just on the problem. So I know that these two here, this 10x and this 7x, those are both positive. And since they're both positive, I'm going to combine them. And that's going to be a 17x. Plus, and we're going to add 22 plus 34 because they're same sign. So we're going to go ahead and add those two. And that is going to be 56. And so once again, we're going to subtract 56 from both sides of the equation. And we're left with 17x is equal to 34. I'm going to divide by 17 from both sides, and x is equal to 2. Now remember, It didn't say to go ahead and find x, it simply said find the measure of each angles. So first I'm going to go ahead and start with the angle BAC, which is the color in purple. So let me go ahead and begin there. Remember, you're basically using the x is equal to 2, plugging that information in. So 10 times 2 plus 22 is going to find me my angle. So 10 times 2, that's 20, plus 22, that'll be a total of 42 degrees. Now, because we were told at the very beginning that this was a right angle, we can use that information, the right angle, so 90 minus our angle that we just found, which is 42 degrees, is going to equal to the missing angle that we need. So we can subtract that first, or we can plug in. So I'm going to do both, and I'm going to subtract this here. If I subtract that, that's going to be 48. So that angle should be 48. And like I said, I'm going to do both just so we can check the work. And so I'm going to plug in 7 times 2 plus 34. And 7 times 2 is going to be 14 plus 34. And turns out, yeah, that does equal to 48. So once again, here I found each of these angles, and now I'm done with my problem. Now, this example, yes, it looks different, but it is the same thing. We're going to go ahead and start off with the angle addition postulate. So at this point, I will go ahead and help you out with that information, and I'm going to start by highlighting my angles. So you should do the same. Grab your highlighter and go ahead and highlight the information, highlight the angles that we're highlighting. And so once I'm done highlighting, I'm going to go ahead and write down my angle addition postulate. So let's go ahead and do that. Now at this point, I went ahead and highlighted the blue angle. First, I'm going to write angle EFH. And if you didn't remember, once again, the vertex has to be in the middle. That's why I said F in the middle. So EFH plus angle HFG, angle HFG, both of them have the same vertex, which is F, is equal to the large angle, which our large angle in this case is angle EFG. EFG, vertex in the middle, which is F. All right, and at this point you can go ahead and press pause. Remember, they are asking you to find the measure of each angle. So once again, similar to this problem up above, you might have to find x first, yes, but it's technically not asking you to find x. So you got to go ahead and go further. All right, go ahead and press pause. Okay, I believe that gave you enough time, so I'm not going to go ahead and solve it with you. So we have 6x minus 5 plus 12x plus 5 is equal to, well, what is this angle? What type of angle is it? If we go back to our notes from chapter 1, hopefully you remember that this is a straight angle. And what is a straight angle equal to? 180 degrees. So now we can go ahead and solve and focus just on my equation. So I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. So let's do that. I see that there's a 6x there, and this is also a 12x. So those are both positive. That is going to be a total of 18x. And I see that there's a negative 5 and a positive 5. Oh, well, what happens there? They cancel. They go away. Is equal to 180. Wow, made my life a lot easier. Now I got to divide by 18 from both sides. And x is going to equal to, well, that one's easy. It's equal to 10. How did I know that? Well, again, if I simply look at 18 divided by 18, well, 18 divided by 18 is 1. And then we just bring down that 0. Okay. So once again, we got to go ahead and look at what the directions tell us to do. And they say, find the measure of each angle. So all I'm going to do is plug in the information. So 6 times 10, which is my information that I found, minus 5. And so 6 times 10, that's going to be 60. Minus 5, and that's going to be 55 degrees, right? And once again, I can do the same thing that I did up above, which up above I did 90 minus 42, if I remember correctly, first, and then I went ahead and plugged it in just to check my work. So that's a way of checking. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to subtract 55 from 180 minus 55 will give me the missing angle that I'm looking for. And so I'm going to borrow, and that should come out to 125. Once again, if I simply plug in the information in to the problem that I was looking for, and it should not be in green. I'm going to go ahead and say 12 times 10 plus 5, and 12 times 10, that's 120. 12 times 10 is 120 plus 5, and that does equal to 125. So yes, that is correct. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next example. Example 3. In this case, we're talking about not angles that are adjacent to each other. If you see here, these angles were adjacent, and that's why we were able to use the angle addition postulate. So again, adjacent next to each other, adjacent next to each other, the angle addition postulate. These angles here, these are not adjacent to each other, which creates a problem. So we got to go back to our notes and figure out, what is this? So I know for sure not angle addition postulate. So maybe I have to go further. And as I look, I think I see a problem that looks very similar to what I have in front of me. A diagram like this one here, looks like this one here. So what are these angles called? Oh, that's right. They are called vertical angles. So since we know that they're vertical angles, well, what are vertical angles? They are congruent to each other. So that means if we know that they are congruent to each other, we have to write a congruent statement. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and write our congruent statement. Remember, a congruent statement is simply stating that two things are congruent to each other. So that's where we're going to go ahead and begin. Now, we all notice that the angles that have information inside them, you'll see that it's this angle here and this angle here. So we're going to go ahead and write a statement with those two angles. And so once again, we also have to notice that they said find the value of x. So that's all we're doing, finding the value of x. So all we got to do is write our congruent statement. So our congruent statement, remember, that's the first thing I'm going to help you with, and then I'm going to ask you to press pause and find the answer. So we're going to go ahead and write the green angle, which is the first one that I highlighted in green. And I'm going to write angle FOX, angle FOX, the vertex in the middle, right, is congruent to angle DOG, angle DOG, vertex in the middle. And now that I have that, I'm going to ask you to press pause, and you're going to go ahead and solve for the problem. All you got to do is find x. Great, I believe that gave you enough time, so let's go ahead and plug in the information and do it together. So this is going to be 5x plus 3 is equal to 98, because they are congruent to each other. So since they're congruent, they're equal to each other, solve for the variable x. And so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides. When I subtract 3 from both sides, I'm left with 5x is equal to 95. Divide 5 from both sides, and x is equal to 19. Thank you.